Good evening. Welcome to this webinar, EU in 2021. My name is Claudio. I am the president of the AICC, the Association of International Chambers of Commerce. We were thinking which event we would organize as the last one of the year. And there is a nice Japanese saying that says basically that it's better to have one day with a great teacher than 1,000 days of studying. And that's what we did for you tonight. We created a panel, a lineup of 6 spectacular speakers, and I'm sure you will enjoy them very much. Before I leave you with the speakers, let me make sure that you understand how this 20 seconds, 30 seconds maximum of sentence. After this preview of the speech, so they can catch your curiosity, and after I introduced each of them, one by one, we're going to call them to give their speech. It's going to be a 7-minute speech, after which we're going to ask them 2 questions that you can ask directly in the chat that is available for you now. So you can start asking the question even now if you want. We're going to select 2 per speaker, and they will have 2 minutes to answer each of the question. The objective here for us is very simple. We want to make sure that you have an exclusive preview of Europe in 2021. So enjoy and let's start. So the first speaker that we're going to have for the technology segment is Professor Pierre Dillenburg. Professor Pierre Dillenburg is a professor of learning technologies and going to be next VP of education at EPFL. Once he declared that he wants to change the world by being a professor. It's a great ambition. Professor, we are looking forward to hear your speech. The title of the speech of Professor Dillenburg is "Will Education Remain Digital After the Pandemic?" So it's important this for us and our children. A short preview, Professor?
Yes, whether the education will remain digital or face-to-face or a mix of them is a key question that everybody asks me, but it's a secondary question. The main question is, will this corporate training increase the business of your company and increase the satisfaction of your employees?
Very good. Thank you very much, Professor. The second segment is the environment and sustainability. And the speaker that we have is Mr. Philip Reiser. He's the CEO of Septis, and he's a passionate and optimistic and renowned speaker about environment and sustainability. Tonight, he will talk to us about sustainable agriculture for green investors. And this is good for Switzerland here, Professor. So, short preview from you too.
Thank you, Claudio. Yes, I think 2020 was a challenging year. So the challenge I'm bringing tonight is to demonstrate to you that Brazil is enabled to grow its production of agricultural and meat products to export to Europe in a sustainable way. So I think it's quite challenging and interesting.
Very good. We're looking forward to hear you. The next segment is health. And we are very lucky to have with us Dr. Ranieri Guerra, who is the Assistant Director General of the World Health Organization, and he formerly was the Director General of Preventive Health for the Italian Minister of Health. And, you know, with this severe syndemic that we have, the most severe in recent history, it has an impact on our fragility as individuals, as a community, and as a global society. His speech is going to be from a new disease into a new collaborative paradigm. A short preview, Professor?
Well, that's the hope. The reality may be sadly different. So we will try to explore the different and converging epidemics, those who are clear, like the current outbreak, those who are less clear, but contributing to the syndemic.
Very good. Thank you very much. Next sector is food, and we have the beautiful smile and brain of Amanda Booker to help us in this. Amanda is the CEO of the Fork. Fork is the leading restaurant booking platform, one of the leading restaurant booking platforms, and she's a real foodie, and she loves food at least as much as the users of the Fork. She's an engaging speaker, as you soon will discover, and the title of her speech is How the Pandemic Helped Accelerate the Digitization of the Restaurant Industry. I hope nothing will happen to my pasta. What is your short preview, Amanda?
Thank you. Always a pleasure. I guess our short preview today would be, how many of you think COVID has been an opportunity for their business rather than something else?
Very good. And then we have the travel segment. And for the travel segment, we have Sebastian Mikos. Sebastian is the Senior VP at IATA. He's a former CEO both of Kenya Airline and LOT Polish Airways. And he's also a former MD of one of the Chamber of Commerce, the French Chamber of Commerce in Poland. You choose a fascinating title for your speech. The title is No Air Connectivity, No Economic Growth. Like no pain, no gain. We are looking forward for your speech. What is your short preview?
Good evening. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be like almost home. My short preview is that screen contact will never replace human contact, and we are in the flying. It is just in my back here is the freedom to explore. So whatever we do on Zoom, Teams, etc., we will always be missing the human part, and this is why I'm waiting to use Amanda's fork again and go to a restaurant, because you cannot serve me food through the screen. So that's my statement. Thanks. Good.
If this is a short statement, we are in for a treat going forward. Allora, the last panelist is Monsieur Jacques Attali. The segment is economy. Jacques is an economist, a writer, a futurologist, is the president of the Positive Planet Foundation. Simply one of the most interesting speakers I've ever seen. He is so interesting that Jack right now is participating to another conference, and he's going to join us in 5 minutes. So when his turn is going to come to deliver his speech, that's exactly what he's going to do. So now that we are back to the first panelist, so we are talking about technology, and I leave it to you, Pierre. Again, the title, Will Education Remain Digital After the Pandemic? Go ahead, Pierre, please.
Bonsoir, mesdames et messieurs. Yes, it's a question I'm asked every day by journalists. So on March 13, Friday morning, we received this email from our president. My university called EPFL, Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, is a top 5 university in Europe in this field of science and technology. And we received this email saying, on Monday, all courses will be online. And on Monday, all courses moved online. We train teachers over the Saturday and the Sunday, and on Monday, things went running. And they were running fine. So professor changed, professor modified the courses, students liked the online courses, things work well in the digital realm. But as Sebastian mentioned, that's not enough. We all miss face-to-face. And we see now 6 months later, our students are exhausted. They're depressed, they are late. These things is not doing very well. We can never continue to do fully online courses. As soon as we will be allowed to come back on campus, we will. But we will not come back to the same point as before. Many teachers discovered the advantage of using some digital means combined with the face-to-face teaching. So the future is clear. The future is a mixed. Future is hybrid. We call it sometimes blended learning, a mix of physical and online. But as all whiskey lovers know, the question is not the blend itself, it's which blend, which percentage of what. And especially companies. The same will occur for corporate training. Should corporate seminars still meet in Gstaad for 3 days in a nice hotel, wine and ski, or should you do it online? And here my point is that's not the first question that chief learning officer should ask. The first question, maybe I'll tell you a short story. once I had the visit of the director of human resource from a private bank in Geneva. And he said, oh, Mr. Delambeau, we come to see you because you are the expert in e-learning. I said, we have to do e-learning. I said, why? Well, everybody does e-learning. We have to do e-learning. I said, why? What is your problem? He said, Mr. Delambeau, we are a private bank. We have no problem. I said, well, then come back when you have a problem. If you have no problem, you don't need to change your training strategy. So my story for many chief learning officers that I meet is, why don't you start by identifying things you want to improve in a company, whether it's a question of sales, of customer satisfaction, of product reliability, or the happiness of your employee at work, the health of your employees. Start from a problem if you want to do something. Why? Because that's the only way you can count the return on investment. Most companies, they do training because they have to do training. It's like a tax. You have to pay it, you pay it. It's part of the Convention Collective de Travail. It's part of the tradition. It's compulsory by law. So you do it, but you don't count the return on investment of corporate training. Not many people count that. Well, when I asked a question to the Director des Ressources Humaines, did you count the return on investment? He said, oh, that's too difficult. When we ask a question here to participants, usually the answer is about the quality of coffee during the seminar, and not about how the job has been transformed by the quality of the corporate training. The quality of training is not the coffee, it's not the beauty of the landscape, even though the beauty of the landscape matters for social things. So the question today of which blend of digital and face-to-face is the question of effectiveness. And the question of effectiveness is related to the notion of transfer. How will the people being trained, the people who attend this seminar, face-to-face or online, whatever, how will they transfer what they heard, to the daily job? And quite often, you hear the speakers, experts speak to you, you kind of agree, and then you are back to your office on Monday and you have a stack of things waiting for you and business as usual. So the way to do a perfect blend is not to suppress the face-to-face seminar, because there you build informal networks in the company that are very important, but maybe to do the online part before. So listening to someone is not so interesting. This part, this input of expert, can be done during the seminar in a nice mountain resort. And then in the seminar, it's not the expert who speak, and I will finish soon, it's the people themselves, those who will have to apply this knowledge to the daily job. They say, let me ask you a question, because in my job, it will not work like that. Can we do it like that? Can we shift it like that? So it will question the expert about how to transfer the input from the expert into the daily context. We all have a lot of constraint. It means that the knowledge from the expert cannot be simply applied like that. So this blend is called the flipped solution. The participants will have to watch some videos or other kind of ways to convey knowledge before the seminar. Those who don't do it, they only come for the seminar, for the wine. So there is this transfer of knowledge before, and then in the seminar, it's not the expert, it's the participant themselves who present the way they will apply that. This is called transfer. And we need to make effective training, we need to make training transferable through a blend of digital and face-to-face events. Claudio, that was my 7 minutes. You have to unmute Claudio.
Let me ask you the two questions that came from the audience. I was just looking at the question as they were coming in. So the first question here says the following: with the current health situation, the market has seen the birth of new online platforms created ad hoc for calls and video conference. Do you think these tools are going to disappear? And if not, which ones will be the most successful?
Who heard about Zoom one year ago? And now it's become a popular word. I will Zoom you tomorrow. or I am over zoomed. So it became almost a common word. So within 1 year or a bit more, Zoom has totally bypassed Skype, I would say. So nobody will survive. You know, Skype has been kind of suffering a lot because nobody survived if they're not a better product. And what makes Zoom better is very small details. No, Zoom, Skype are not teaching solution. They are just video conferencing. Now what we see coming are tools that integrate the fact that they've been they're video conferencing real time, but designed for education, designed for seminars where the situation is less asymmetrical as in Zoom. So we may expect that, but also we now face a situation where part of the students are online and part of them are in the same room. And some of the teaching will also be face-to-face later on. So we need to, we see emerging new tools in the last few months, which are more specific for online training than Zoom or Skype or Meet or Teams.
Very good. I'm gonna read you the second question that we received that says the following. Which are the impacts of COVID-19 for schools, university and students that will persist in 2021 for sure?
Well, two impacts. First of all, we know this is unbearable. We cannot sustain long-term, fully online education. Second point, we know that some things working well, like participation of the students in Zoom, seems a bit higher than in a large lecture theater. Because when you're at the back of a large lecture theater, the professor is anyway smaller than on your Zoom. So more questions and so on. So there are pros and cons that we have to mix. But something more important, I think. Journalists have been speaking a lot about homeschooling. You know, homeschooling creates social inequality because kids don't have the same condition at home. Some of them have a better equipment, some of them have a room where they're alone, and so on and so on. And this is social inequality. But homework has always been known in schools to create social inequality. Some kids are at home, the parents are not there, some parents are there but they don't care. So the situation of inequality created by online education already exists for decades about homework, school homework. And we never tackled that very seriously. So I think it's time to tackle that because basically homeschooling will continue every day after 5 o'clock. Kids are doing homeschooling. So one implication for me would be to the departments of education to set up systems where the kids keep some link with the school after 4 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon if it is day off, or on Saturday morning when they study, because this is a source of social injustice, and we have technologies to solve it. We have technologies to help kids with not at home what they need for learning. We have technologies to provide this support. Probably not teachers, maybe a new job to invent, but we should say, okay, this was an opportunity to discover that we can keep contact online with kids who do not have the best family context to do so, as a complement, not to replace families, of course, as a complement.
Very good, Professor. Thank you very, very much. I think I just learned that basically I have to become more computer savvy. So I have to transform myself from parent to parent 2.0 if I want to survive the school of the future and help my kids. Thank you very much, Professor. We're going to now move to the economy. And as I told you in the opening remarks, basically we have with us Monsieur Dr. Jacques Attali, which you all know. I introduced him before. Now he's live with us here. And the title of his speech is the year of 2020-21, the year for Europe to implement the economy of life. A very inspiring title. Monsieur Jacques Attali, please. You need to unmute, Monsieur Attali.
Thank you very much. I was not late, actually. I was there, but you didn't hear me when it was supposed to be my turn. I hate to be late. Well, actually, what is seen as the most probable scenario, economically speaking, is the fact that there will be a huge growth in China as well as in the US, and quite a large growth in Europe in 2021, mainly linked to the fact that there will be a need to keep up with the past and try to find ways to compensate the losses as soon as possible. As soon as at least the vaccine is around, this will happen, and according to the main consensus of the experts, we'll have a very good economic year in Europe, less good than in China and less good than in the US. That's the global consensus. I don't think it is true. I think there are many, many problems that will be in front of us worldwide, but I'm not going to speak about them. I think that, frankly, rapidly, US will have huge problems to face with the president. We have no majority in the Senate, which is probable, but China is sitting on a bubble, on bubbles that are going to blow up in the near future, and that China is not going to be the triumphant society of the future. They are, on the contrary, full of problems that will appear very soon. In Europe, we also have a lot of problems coming next year and a lot of uncertainty, which are more politics and political, social than economical. Economically, there is, as I said, a consensus of a growth and also all the instruments for Europe as an entity, I mean, European Union, to work quite well. We have an excellent central bank, able to print as much money as needed, whatever it costs, as it was said by Mr. Draghi. We have a European Commission which is strong. We have now an agreement on the implementation of a fund of 750 billion euro. We have the largest public bank in the world, which is not known enough, which is the European Bank for Investment, European Investment Bank, EIB, which is the largest bank in the world. Then we have all the instruments to move on rapidly. But we have also a lot of potential problems as everywhere. We have a lot of unemployment, a lot of bankruptcy. Some banks are going to be badly hit by the crisis. I mean, mainly Spanish and Italian banks are going to be hit, and that would be a huge problem for them. And also, and more than that, we have effective political unknown situation. I don't speak about the Brexit, but Brexit is behind us, whatever it is, either it is an Australian or a Canadian, whatever. It's mainly a cost for UK. They made the choice fine, not a problem for European Union. What is a problem for European Union is to know what will happen in 2021 in Germany. The question is, who will replace Mrs. Merkel? Will it be herself? She said no, but we never take no for an answer, as everybody is pushing for her to stay. If it doesn't stay, it's a very important unknown question. And whatever it is, whoever it is, it will take a long time to learn and to be accepted as the leader that Mrs. Merkel was during the past, which means that the French president will have more power, even if it's also going to enter into an election year a year later. But globally speaking, economically, everything is in place for Europe to work well. What is the problem for me in Europe will be the lack of long-term vision, which is also true elsewhere in many other countries. We don't have a vision of what is needed to do in the future. And if we had such a vision, I think we should do two things. One, to try to understand the next threats, which of course are ecological, and that is certainly dealt with, but also in terms of geopolitics. We have a lot of potential geopolitical threats, and on the long-term strategy of the European Union, now it's time to realize that whoever is president of the United States, Europe is alone. No one will come to defend us, even if some friends in Europe, such as some Germans, less than ever, some Polish people, less than ever, still believe that the American soldiers will come to fight for them if they are attacked. This is not true. And then we have to begin to understand that we have to build a common defense. That will be not only important politically, but economically. Don't forget that the main engine of the American power, economic power, is the DARPA, DoD, Department of Defense, and all the industries which are linked to that. We don't have that in Europe. And if we begin to realize that we need to have our own defense, our own DARPA, our own DoD, then we'll move towards another dimension of growth, defense. And second, to realize that what has been understood during this crisis is that some sectors have been underestimated and they're tragically missing. It's what I call the economy of life. The economy of life are the main sectors which should be more important, more developed than they are now, which is mainly health, of course, education, digital distribution, logistics, clean water, clean energy, food, hygiene, and some other sectors I can name. In both sectors, there is no planes, there is no tourism, there is no textile, there is no oil. That means that there is a huge request for reorganization, retraining, reorientation of those industries, as well as a focus from public national company banks, as well as the fund that I just mentioned, European Investment Bank, and the $750 billion euro of funds to focus on the sectors of economy of life. If we do that, if Europe has a clear vision of economy of life as priorities to prepare for the next pandemics, to prepare for the climate change, to create a real Weltanschauung of European project, then I think Europe has a wonderful future. If not, everything is possible.
Wow, Mr. Attali, a lot of information in very little time, so interesting that is unbelievable. Thank you very, very much. They just handed me the questions that we received. Allora, first question, which countries will you expect to recover faster following the pandemic? Which European countries, obviously?
We are all interdependent. I don't think that anyone will be better. Maybe some people would say Germany will be the number one. Some people say it's France. Some people say it's going to be Italy because it's lagging quite behind. But, you know, we are so interdependent that the question of who is first doesn't matter.
Okay. The second question says, which economic actions Europe should take in 2021 in response to these massive challenges that we are facing?
To focus the investment, public and private investments in the sectors I just mentioned, in order really to go to the real investment which are useful for creating a long-term growth and not to spend too much money on dying sectors just to avoid to make a real choice which is needed for the future. We need to reorganize our economy in the new sectors, in the new technologies. We need to become better on AI than we are on new energies, as we are on biomimicry, which is a very fundamental sector of the future that we are. We need to focus on new sectors and try to avoid to put too much money on the dying sectors, as we may continue to do. That's key for the future, and I'm not sure that the Europeans will do. Focus on new sectors, retrain the workers and reorganize the companies that are in dying sectors, and everything can be better. The French are the worst case in terms of growth in 2020, -10 or -11, which is terrible, almost worse than the others. I do think that France can be the leader next year, because the French president will be the real leader of Europe for a while, as long as the next German chancellor is in place, except if it's Merkel, which I would prefer to see Mrs. Merkel stay. But if he doesn't stay, that will give to France a very important role in 2021.
Mr. Attali, thank you very much. A very interesting speech. I learned from you that I need to start asking myself the right questions, because some of the answers you gave us, I didn't have the question for. So thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. Now, we're going to go to the next two sections. The next one is going to be environment and sustainability. And after that, we're going to have health, just to create a little bit of suspense. So environment and sustainability, we have Mr. Philip Reiser, as I introduced before, and he's going to talk to us about sustainable agriculture for green investors, his Brazilian story. Please, Philip.
Thank you, Claudio. You know, I think 2020 was a very challenging year, so I wanted to bring some hope for the end of the year and the outlook for 2021. And so tonight I will not represent the company I'm representing, but I will represent a non-for-profit association we are a member in Brazil, which is called ICLF Network. And what is ICLF? And I'm sorry for this kind of history, but it's an integrated system where you integrate crops, livestock, and forest. So it's a way of cultivating on a rotation basis that demonstrates scientifically various benefits. So you environmentally, you reduce the use of resources like water, you increase the biomass in the soil, turning the soil more productive, more efficient, which in turn increase the production and the net income of the farmers. All this brings as well a reduction of emission of greenhouse gas emission. It even may generate credit of it. So, you know, this is why I felt in love with this association. I said, okay, what is the situation in Brazil? And we know that Brazil take the challenge to, let's say, create and work more agro products to feed all the world. And today there are already 16 million hectares of ICLF land. The challenge is to double it to 30 million hectares up to 2030. But the point, okay, how do we come to investors? And if this way of producing is so good, why don't we have more land already using this kind of system? And what we observed in the association is the challenge to have producers getting access to financing. Because you understand, either you go for intensive crops like soybean culture, or you go for intense livestock growth. And these degrades the land as well. These integration enable recovery of the lands. But the point is, if you want to start integrating all these, you need to invest first. You need to buy machinery, equipment to invest into forest. Forest, you need to wait at least 7 years to get some return on it. And the point is, how do you match and how do you attract investors to get access to, let's say, cheap financing for them? And this is why in 2020 we went through, as an association, we participated to the Global Innovation Lab for Climate Finance, organized by the World Bank, and we get access to an accelerator of an investment fund. And the point is, we removed the traditional economical way to link the interest rates to the risk of the producers, but we created a protocol of ICLF to make sure that all best practices that will demonstrate all these sustainable and social benefits, that they are fulfilled. So we created a trust score initiatives based on it, and it's a totally innovative way. It's no longer certification, it's not self-declaration, it's a constant monitoring through satellite imagery, soil analysis, IoT, using blockchain, so that there is a constant monitoring of it, which enables as well to provide some recommendation to farmers. But it also provides evidence of the investments done by the green investors. So in this way, we enable a trusted environment so that investors can trust Brazilian producers. And this time, there will be no cost for the Brazilian producers. It's paid by the investors. So this is a way to create trust, and I hope in 2021 there will be the launch of this investment fund. So I hope, and I know that already the German and the British governments are part of the investors, but I hope that in the second step, maybe 2022, we may have some, let's say, more interest from the European consumption markets to buy those sustainable products. Because I think at some point in time, agricultural farmers, producers are doing the sustainable way of agriculture and have to be rewarded for that. And I think we created a platform for them to bring this transparency so that they can be rewarded for all their work. So this is my message of hope for 2021.
Very good, thank you very much. In the meantime, we have some questions, very specific questions. Allora, this one says, 2020 has been the second warmest year since first climate measurements, and the goals of the Paris Agreement are far to be reached. Why all countries are not able to reach their climate goals, and which role can Europe play to achieve them?
Wow, this is not an easy question. Maybe I will give you another answer than the answer to your question. But you know, basically, it looks like it's a change of habits. And I think that the goals from the Paris Agreement were very long-term agreements. And to me, it looks like it's similar to, you know, the resolution you take at New Year every year. Okay, I will stop eating too much Swiss chocolates. I will do some sport, and you know, after 2-3 weeks, okay, no, it's too difficult. Let's stop. You know, when you have two long-term objectives, it's very difficult to keep motivation. I think Europe has a key role to play in 2021, because you should be aware there will be the COP26 in Glasgow. And how do we bring emergency and priority to such actions? And it is all nations declaring together the climate emergency. Otherwise, there will be no change.
Very good, thank you very much. The second one. Won't the current situation have an impact on the fight against global warming, which seems to be in third place in the state's priority in the face of health and economic crisis that appear to be first?
Yes, I think it's an impact, definitely. I think when people are worried about their job, unemployment, how they're going to feed their family, you forget about longer term objectives. This is truly natural. But I think I will then come back to Mr. Attali's speech. I think when we talk about sustainable agriculture or clean energy, those are markets for the future. And you know, bringing new technologies, and in those kind of difficult time, this is where you can see opportunity to accelerate the recovery of the sector as well. So I think there is always hope.
Well, thank you very much, Philippe. I tell you, after all this problem of the ecology, I think the next problem we have to solve is the smog that is clouding a lot of the people inside during this COVID. So the next one is going to be the human ecology that we have to talk about. Thank you, Philippe, very much for your participation. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And we are moving now to the health speech, the health sector. So we are lucky to have Dr. Ranieri Guerra, and his speech, again, the title is From a New Disease into a New Collaborative Paradigm. Mr. Guerra, please.
Well, thank you very much and good evening. The first part of the title is where we are. The second is the hope we have, of course. And as it has been said, we may have short-term hopes that will be met by the new vaccines, by the new immune therapy, which will be highly effective in the very near future. But as someone else has already said, what may be lacking is the long-term vision. As a matter of fact, in our countries, in our continent, the only state which may have a very long-term vision is the Holy See, where the Pope has given us some good hints on what the future may look like. But obviously, that's a different political scenario that he has to manage, with all the challenges, with all the problems that we may share, but to some extent. The real issue is that we have at this time, besides the major outbreak that we are witnessing and we are trying to survive from, we have a number of underlying epidemics that this outbreak has clearly shown in terms of how fragile, how vulnerable our societies and our social architecture is, besides the medical research, besides the medical progress and everything else. We have the unfinished agenda of communicable diseases. We should not forget that COVID is part of the story. It's a pandemic, but we still have a number of different outbreaks which are sneaking around. Just to make an example, Ebola is still there, still in African countries, but we still have polio outbreak from vaccine-derived viruses. We have West Nile fever, which is coming into our countries. We have dengue fever, which is also coming. We have chikungunya outbreak somewhere, and so on and so forth. So communicable diseases are not over. And I don't want to quote, but it's inevitable. A very a famous former Surgeon General of the US federal system who said some 35 years ago, you know, guys, communicable diseases are over. We need to focus on non-communicable diseases now. So nothing was wronger. But as a matter of fact, we still have an outbreak, which is a silent underlying outbreak of communicable diseases, such as hypertension, such as, you know, pulmonary obstructive diseases, such as cardiovascular diseases, or cancer, mental health, which are sometimes neglected conditions. But at the same time, if you look at the mortality, at the fatality ratio of COVID, you may find that all these people who suffer from a set of non-communicable diseases are those who die. They are those who develop serious consequences. They are those who are admitted in hospitals, in intensive care units, and they have, in a way, the major burden of the outbreak that we are witnessing now. So it's a kind of paradox, because we are leaving behind these people simply because the health services are just overcrowded and they need to cope with the current outbreak. But we still have, for instance, in Italy, 1.5 million cancer patients are left behind. Preventive screening for cancer is just over. We need to reestablish all the conditions for the near future. Intra-hospital mortality rate for cardiovascular diseases has increased from less than 4% to 15%, meaning that we have to fix the system once again once this outbreak is over. But at the same time, we have another outbreak, which is the unnecessary epidemic of accidents, violence, environmental health, and factors linked to environmental degradation. Climate is part of it, but it's not the only story. So in a way, everything is contributing to a serious situation which is in a way hitting some particular areas of our societies. And this is the fourth epidemic, which is inequalities. Inequalities means that whatever the condition we suffer from, we can still have access to services because we are privileged. But at the same time, a different proportion of our society is just not able to cope. They cannot access services at the right time. They cannot access the right service. They are just neglected. And in time of crisis, they are left behind. And this is something that we cannot afford, because if we start sacrificing human capital in our societies, wherever this human capital is, the future is dark. We have three conditions that underline the fragility of our system. Health system itself, we need to fix several areas of our health systems. Hospitals are fine to some extent if the first line of primary health care works, if GPs are there, if GPs are competent, if they can manage people staying at home, not being admitted to hospitals unnecessarily, not to be infected while they stay in hospital, as it happens almost everywhere. A health system means an equitable capacity of the government, of the public system, of the private partners to provide the services which are needed to all the strata of society. And this is a combination of medical, social, care system that we need to review carefully, because otherwise the entire system becomes unsustainable and in a way ineffective, as we have seen and we are witnessing in all our countries in Europe. The economic value of investments in health has to be underlined. Health systems have been, in a way, neglected by all the governments throughout, with the possible exception of Germany, that in fact initially, not now unfortunately, initially was much better placed than other member states in Europe to cope with this outbreak. I'm saying not now because, as you know, Chancellor Merkel declared a severe lockdown until the beginning of January because numbers are going up. They are growing, and they're growing without control, as in all the other countries, because this virus does not recognize boundaries, does not recognize the traditional way of managing diseases. Finally, determinants of health. We need to rethink carefully of what is determinant of health in terms of not only of social, economic, but also commercial determinants, where the private sector has a responsibility. And the responsibility is very clear. We can't afford to drink some kinds of alcohol beverages, some kind of soft drinks and others that are classified as a bad determinant for our health. Obesity is a reality. Hypertension is a reality. Diabetes is a reality. And we, by the time the emergency is over, we will really need to cope with these, which are now becoming emergency because we can't cope with traditional ways of delivering services. In terms of what's going to happen, we have forthcoming remedies that will allow us to get out of this situation pretty soon, I hope. New vaccines are coming. We will start most likely European member states vaccination, hopefully at the same time in all the member states, including Switzerland, which is an associated state, but in this case cannot really survive alone. Switzerland has to work with all the other European member states in synchronizing vaccination campaigns. Otherwise, we will not be able to make sure that the coverage which is needed to get to a proper herd immunity is reached in time. It will take another couple of years otherwise. We need to strengthen our old Venetian quarantine measures, because remember that Venice survived the plague in Europe in the 16th century by strengthening and classifying all different quarantine measures that we are adopting now, because after so many centuries, these are still the pivotal measures that allow us to get off the outbreak hopefully soon. But we have another issue which will allow us a long-term remedy, which is the kind of all of society and all of government policy towards health and social care to our population. In other words, we really need to invest systematically in the human capital. We need to teach the value of science to our children. We need to develop a paradigm by which semantics is not anti-science. People understand what a vaccine means. People understand what a disease is. People understand what a risk factor is. And I will stop here, hopefully not to give you a darker future perspective. Thank you.
Dr. Guerra, you still have the 2 questions to redeem yourself and give us a little bit of hope. I'm joking. Now, question number 1. Will Europe get rid of COVID faster than other regions of the world?
That's a question which has no answer, because sooner or later, everyone will get off. The thing is that if we synchronize efforts everywhere, then this solution will be much faster for everybody. If we have predatory countries or predatory governments trying to survive at the detriment, at the expenses of the others, this will not work. I think that the circulation of the virus from east to west, from north to south, has shown clearly that we need to have solidarity and to work all together. Otherwise, there won't be very much hope. We can get out of this wave faster, but then we will have another wave coming back. And I don't think we can afford a 3rd or a 4th wave. I think our economies are just exhausted. Our people are exhausted. And we need to give not only hope, but certainty, some security, some safety that is concrete.
Thank you very much. The second question. How will you convince people to get vaccinated? Mistrust has never been so strong.
Well, the easy answer is by the force of law. People will be forced to vaccinate, but this doesn't work. I mean, obviously, we need to invest. On the short term, we need to invest on a proper communication campaign. We need to explain what it means. We need to explain what it is. We need to, clarify what a vaccine is, how it is. What are the components? Because there are still people who think that fetal cells are the major content of a vaccine. There are issues like microchips being in the vaccine that will allow this or that company to control the lives of those who are vaccinated, and this is something that may stimulate smiles in our cultures, but they are there. And this is 5 to 10% of population, which is still on the flat land and, all the stories. At the same time, we know that 45% of the French population will refuse vaccines at the first instance, 35 to 40% of the Italians, more than 50% of the Americans. So there is something wrong there that we need to amend. Short time, communication. Long time, we need to go back to primary schools and to try to inculcate in our children what is science, what is the language of science, how science can be understood, because all too often we talk our language, which is not clearly understood. We fail to tell the story of science. And this is something that needs to be amended, and needs to be amended now, because these children will be the future adults, and they will be already disoriented or disturbed, if you wish, by the new technologies at stake for training, for education, and others. This generation in the future will have to be supported quite strongly, because these days, with the closures of the schools, with the new ways of teaching and others, childhood development is at clear risk, and we need to invest systematically in that.
Very good, Dr. Guerra. They want you to convince people to get vaccinated, but the World Health Organization is it's a GPS. It gives you indication of where you're supposed to go from a starting point. It's not gonna put rules. The governments have to put the rules, like you said.
Absolutely, but I'll be the first to be vaccinated, hopefully. So I will be acting as a good example.
Great, thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Sebastian Mikos, and we are talking about travel, a much lighter subject that we really hope is going to bring us good news. So the title of the speech is No Air Connectivity, No Economic Growth. Mr. Mikos.
Thank you very much. I don't know. I didn't know my task was to be optimistic, but I'll be optimistic at the end. But definitely, without vaccines, we will not make it. Yeah. So I'm quite dependent of what was just mentioned by vaccines. So, we still know people who are trying to prove that the Earth is flat. Yeah. And we take them on the plane, and then they say it's a government conspiracy. So it's going to be quite challenging to convince them about the vaccines, but hopefully it's a minority. So we are not too worried. And anyway, if you can be vaccinated, probably in the future it's going to be difficult to board the plane without a vaccine. So that's what we believe will happen in some more distant future. But we are living something which is. And the word is unfortunately a little used, but it's a historic crisis, yes, and it's not really a crisis of transport, because there is a wording saying this is an aviation historic crisis. Actually, it's a paradox, because we have planes, we have pilots, we have airports, and the most important, we have customers. So we have people eager to fly, but they cannot fly because of the administrative closures of markets, and also something which is the quarantines. And actually, if you impose on passengers a quarantine, it's equivalent to closure of the market, because nobody wants to go and don't know if you at arrival will be put into quarantine, or on the way back you will have to stay in quarantine. So of course there is a human dimension that I mentioned at the beginning, which is the predominance of this type of gatherings as we have today, which is through the screen, which is creating really a fatigue of digital fatigue, of spending hours in front of the screens. The energy is different, the human touch is not there, and the reason for that is and the fact is that is the so-called loss of connectivity. So let me just give you an example in Europe, and actually this dimension, this human dimension, has an economic dimension behind. In Europe, before COVID, we have 9,000 pairs of cities which were directly connected. So you could do a mathematical model and go from city A to city B, and we had 9,000 pairs. This crisis has actually destroyed literally the last 20 years of growth, because as we speak, at the end of this year, we have about 2,100 pairs which exists. So it means that the capacity of going from point A to point B within Europe has dramatically decreased. It's been divided basically by 4. Yeah? And that has an impact on the capacity of people connecting, of people seeing each other, because of course there is a business travel, and we've been doing this a lot in Europe, but the last 20 years were the years where the prices of travel was really decreasing, and that allowed much more connectivity among very remote points, even secondary points, creating something which is still, I believe, the industry of 21st century, which is the usage of our free time, which is tourism, various types of tourism. But before COVID, we had literally 750 million tourists a year, and half of them were using planes to commute. And I'm talking about intra-European tourism. So that was the backbone of all the intra-European connectivity. And frankly, this is why I think the word have meaning, and saying that this is a historic crisis and this is a historic negative impact, it's really justified. Of course, on top of that, we are adding the cargo. And cargo is a very disrespected, or maybe not seen, not understood part of our business. And now everybody came to see us. Oh, there is a vaccine to be distributed. Guess who's going to do it? Oh, airlines. Oh, suddenly there is a cargo. Actually, cargo is mainly distributed in the belly of the planes where all of us fly as passengers. The freighter, these big planes, represent less than 15% of the business normally. So having less planes means less cargo, less distribution of high-value goods and perishable goods. Yeah, because this is the fastest way you can distribute goods. And we are transporting as airline industry 1% of the tonnage, but 35% of the value. So this shows you which type of goods are distributed. So this is why, and of course, now there is this tendency of saying, so hopefully not during this panel, of blaming us for polluting the planet, killing the environment, etc. So of course, just for the sake of clarity, you cannot replace airlines even inside Europe because of the distances and of the speed. Literally no alternative. While we represent less than 2% of CO2 emissions worldwide, and of course we do not. It doesn't mean that we ignore the environmental problem. We say, okay, let's fly and pollute, because we have a whole system of how to decrease by half our CO2 emissions by 2050. For which, of course, we as airlines have to push producers of planes and engines to produce technology which today doesn't exist, because of course we are the only industry which has to fight with gravitation, yeah, and we need to carry our own source of energy with us. And this source of energy today doesn't exist. I mean, it's a source of energy which is capable of lifting a small 2-people plane on a half-an-hour flight. But when you talk about what we used to know in Europe in terms of transport, this technology doesn't exist. But of course now there is the vaccine coming, and vaccine is unfortunately a little overestimated, because everybody thinks that now that we have the vaccine, countries will open in a week. They will not. It will take 18-20 months to be distributed. It's going to be a process which is going to be prioritized. So most sensitive groups to less sensitive groups. And it's going to take a lot of time, not only to distribute and vaccinate, but what doctor was saying, to convince citizens to go and get vaccinated. So that's something which is, of course, for our industry a big challenge, but it's also a big optimism. Yeah, we see it as the end game of this pandemic. Of course, if we continue testing our passengers, so in airlines now we are all becoming medical specialists, because actually it's the sanitary authorities which are ruling us, because if they don't allow us to fly, we don't fly. We here are very strongly in IATA advocating to really make systematic testing rather than quarantines, particularly when the vaccine will arrive, for a very simple reason that even if you get vaccinated, you still need to be tested to prove that the vaccine is working, because the vaccine makes sense only if you have a herd immunity. So we need to test to know that people have the antibodies. So the testing will be part of our journeys probably for the next 2 years. But I think that, and this is the optimism, that passengers will be back. So we all have appetite for travel. There is a backlog of visits. There is a backlog of trips. And I think that while having this sustainability element in mind, that we need to really be different in our approach to the planet, I think that passengers will be back, because many surveys are showing us that our customers of European airlines want to travel, provided that we respect the sanitary protocols and they feel safe. So, masks, hands cleaning, everything, the distancing at the airport, everything that we do on every day that we got used to, and it has become a normal behavior now. That provides a certainty that passengers will be back, so they will travel, and that will help not only the human part of the intra-European connectivity, but also the economic part of contributing to growth. So yeah, a very bad historic annus horribilis. But a very good outlook for 2021, and most likely I would bet 2022. 2021 will be still ramping up and challenging. That's it from me, Claudio.
Because I have to say, I'm glad that you're optimistic, because I intend to fly a lot. So I'm sure I'm going to contribute to the reservations and bookings. Now, let's go to the questions that were passed to me here. The first one, it seems like everybody is really interested in trying to fly somewhere, because the questions are very particular. The journey will change, and so will be the way of traveling, it seems. But how temporary is it, the situation in which we are today?
The temporary solutions tends to be the most permanent one. That's the problem we have. I believe that the journey will have now the sanitary component. It's going to be very difficult not to have probably in the next few years a form of biological boarding or a bio passport. I think that countries will demand that passengers gets approved or of a test or of a vaccine, And this conscience that you can distribute a disease will be equivalent to the safety conscience prior to 9/11. We got so used to this safe security controls now that you arrive at the airport, you start unstripping. You take your belt, you take your watch, you just do it automatically. Yes. Now, can you imagine that 10 years ago you would be asked your shoes off? You would say the guys are nuts. Yes. And now you just do it because you understand the process. So I think that this part of conscience, that we are animals at the end of the day, and a human body is a biological mechanism, will be more in the conscience. And when we saw tourists in Europe from Asia or from China with masks, everybody was looking at them with big eyes. Yes. And now I think that this behavior will be more understood, and this will change in the journey for a long period of time. That's what I believe.
Good. The second question. Everybody looks at how soon do you think we will return to a pre-COVID situation when traveling?
So that depends very much on all of us. But I believe that as I mentioned, 2021 will be a slow open of markets. Europe as an entity, European Union, probably will be faster because of the political arrangements that can be done inside European Union. But if you take the extreme example, which is the really most extreme, Australia has decided that until the vaccine is broadly distributed and until they are sure that they will have no COVID, so at the end of 2021, they will not admit any international flight. So 2021 is already done. Australia and New Zealand has a very, very similar approach. So I believe that this return to pre-COVID will really start in 2022, but there will be two additional elements which are actually interesting also for chambers, for everybody. First, what's going to be the impact of the Europe's recession? Jacques Attali was just mentioning -10%. It will have an effect on revenues, on spending. So on demand. That's number one. But number two, and this is the most interesting part, is which is the percentage of travel that will disappear because the Zooms and the Skypes and Teams and God knows what else is replacing part of our habits of working. So where you normally would go for a meeting, now it's going to be much easier and much more accustomed to have a video call. So the question is, what's going to be the impact of the business travel that is going to be replaced by remote contact where you would normally go somewhere? That, of course, will have spin-off effects on the offering on the market. So therefore, on these pairs of cities that I was mentioning, how much offer will you have, and how much the competition will exist on the market? Our official IATA position is that traffic of pre-COVID period will return worldwide in 2024/2025.
Wow. Okay, I guess that this reduction of pairs, like you had explained to us, that unfortunately exists from 9,000 to 2,000 is huge. It means we cannot look for too many new destinations. I guess we have to learn to look with new eyes at the destinations we have closer. But it's good because sometimes we are missing exactly what's closer to us, no? So thank you very much. But at least when we speak of travel, even if you don't give us fantastic news, still we dream about traveling is already good enough. Thank you very much,
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
My pleasure, Claudia. Thanks.
And now we close with the smile and the energy of Amanda talking about food. And honestly, Amanda, I was waiting for this speech because as an Italian, I appreciate very much whatever you're gonna say about food. Amanda is gonna talk to us about how the pandemic helped accelerate the digitization of the restaurant industry. Please, Amanda.
Sorry, I just had to unmute myself there. I got a little bit lost on your screen. Hi everybody, and thanks for the intro, Claudio. Very happy to be here. I know I opened with a statement that said, how many of you think it was an opportunity for their business, COVID? And I know that's a very strange statement, but as you also mentioned, Claudio, about entrepreneurs, we do have that mindset. We see opportunities on every scale. And I know that's a strange statement, but at the Fork, we've chosen to see the positive side of this. We've lost several months of income following a near total closure of all the restaurants around the world, but we've gained probably a greater sense of confidence in the future, because COVID has not altered the will to go to restaurants, but accelerated, the evolution of the industry, and the future of the restaurant industry is going to be digital, quite frankly. The restaurant industry was probably one of the most affected by the COVID crisis. One of the measures taken almost unanimously by all countries is the closure of all the countries in the world, and that comes from the worldwide restaurant industry in 2019 was 1.6 trillion. So to go from 1.6 trillion to in 2020, the big fat zero during the months of closure was seemingly painful, as most of my counterparts here have explained in their different sectors. And the European restaurant industry alone lost between 30 and 40% of revenue during the first 8 months of the year. COVID changed the way restaurateurs operated and served food and how they were working. They had to reinvent themselves to survive. And digitalization is emerging as the most effective weapon. This pandemic has brought restaurants new ways to communicate with customers, like social media, cooking shows, to manage business and emphasize a need for agility to adapt to the different services that they need to offer. I could argue that this revolution is new, but the reality is this revolution was already underway, because it was underway in us as users in the consumer sector. But it's now shifting the consumer preferences and the adoption of new technologies into the restoration side. And I would say that we're now experiencing an industry that is digitalized, I would say even arguably at every step of the way of the value chain, from seeking information, recommendations, to booking your favorite establishment, up to sharing experiences on social media and leaving reviews. 88% of consumers consult an online review before choosing a restaurant now. 80% of internet users attach much more importance to an online review now, just like you were saying about traveling and about security going through now, to word of mouth. You never thought that was possible, but now you validate complete reviews that you never thought you would before. And 50% of restaurant consumers book outside of opening hours. So you're just looking to make life happen when you need life to happen. And one of my favorite ones is, did you know there's 40 million hashtags, #restaurants on Instagram? There you go. 64% of restaurateurs in Europe believe that digital tools were decisive during the crisis, and 87% will continue to use them after the crisis. What do I mean by that? So we're talking tools like online booking, online payment, online menu, digital floor plans that allow restaurants to streamline and organize the process, more easily manage distancing issues, inform consumers and reassure them about compliance and sanitary protocols that are so important, and to keep the contact up with so they don't completely lose this customer base, right? Users need transparency as well during the crisis to ensure that the restaurant complies with hygiene rules that are really important. About 80% of those polled when they were about to leave the lockdown, that was one of the most grave concerns that they had, was to ensure that the establishments that they were going to go to were complying with the new rules. And consumer contact moves from the dining room to social media. So what does that mean? About 71% of restaurants have used this channel more often than not now, just to communicate with their followers and with to make their lives known and open up their kitchens, so to speak. During COVID, restaurants had to reinvent themselves by diversifying their activity, and digital supported them in this change by allowing them to inform consumers about the new services they offered. New services include anything from trying to delve into a new source of income, like making home kits to reproducing recipes or selling grocery products like olive oil, wine, fresh pasta, and my beloved cheese, of course. And that being said, the majority of restaurants have turned to the delivery or takeaway solutions to compensate for temporary or partial closures. The number of restaurants offering one of these services, I think, is the last numbers we saw have over doubled. All types of restaurants have explored some form of solution, from small restaurants to high-end restaurants, and even Michelin-starred restaurants like Alain Ducasse in France or Philippe Chevrier in Switzerland, pivoting their signature plates towards less elaborate and more financially accessible dishes. But I think we would all agree this is a temporary solution. The majority of restaurants fail to achieve economic balance. And a lot of restaurants that we've spoken to, few believe that it's allowed them to generate profits. However, a lot of these choices that they've done allowed them to stay in contact with their customers without necessarily losing or gaining money, so it was a trade-off. COVID has also influenced chefs on how they designed their menus, how they were approaching their kitchens. They had to adapt their menus to this new situation, whether by offering a dedicated menu for delivery, all-day menus to fit people's strange schedule constraints or norms by the countries. 43% of restaurants also reduced their menus drastically just to meet expenses. And in doing so, a good side, and our sustainable friends out there in the audience will like this one, also reconnected themselves with the sustainability opportunity around food waste and how they could approach that. I see some nodding of the heads. And more than 60% of restaurants are now taking on this ecological, I would say, outlook as an opportunity coming out of COVID. So there is opportunities that awaken within us that perhaps might not have done otherwise. This crisis has undoubtedly revealed the agility and creativity of the restaurant industry, the resilience of the European consumer as well. Going out to your restaurant is anchored in your daily life, and it's demonstrated time and time again that the desire to connect and share real life experiences is fundamental to our cultures. Nearly 70% of Europeans intended to return to restaurants within 15 days of the opening. Our numbers confirmed that even during the summer after the first wave, actually, as people really wanted to go back to normal social experiences, which to the detriment, as Dr. Guerrero said, possibly, but you know, they crave that human contact, like dining out. And even during the summer, we had global levels of bookings that were almost similar to the previous year. And we experienced growth in countries like Switzerland, Italy, Portugal, Sweden, and Belgium year on year. So these are encouraging signals for this industry, I would say. And I would just like to close with saying that we will always be, of course, alongside our 80,000 partner restaurants to support them in the digitalization of their activity and to optimize their results and allow all of you in complete safety to meet again and share gastronomic experiences at our restaurants. Thank you very much.
I told you that she was going to be engaging. I was not kidding. Now, Amanda, a couple of questions came in for you. The first one, with the health crisis in recent months, how have you supported the restaurants?
Oh, that's a good question. So I would say we got together and we thought about it a lot, and we tried to act really fast. So one of the first things we did, because we had the ability, we are a tech platform, of course, we mobilized our tech teams and we created a page called saveourrestaurants.com, which is a platform, totally no cost to us, by the way, just to be very clear, I'm not selling something. It's just so that restaurants can sign up to receive prepaid vouchers. So you can sign up and buy a voucher, so give money in advance to your favorite restaurant so that it helps keeping them open. And then whenever, you know, the closure in your establishment or in your area was open again, you could go to that restaurant and they would have benefited from that extra cash during those difficult times, right? And that operation generated about €1 million for restaurants. So they were very grateful, and it also made us feel like we were contributing in times of need. We also gave free of charge our services of our ERB, which is our electronic reservation book, so that where the table management software and reservation management software to our restaurants. We also promoted for free any restaurant that was wanting to do takeaway delivery on our website, even though we are not dedicated to that in any way, shape, or form. We created a safety badge for COVID so that the restaurants can explain the safety measures that they have in place and how they're adapting to each individual situation in the local plane. In Italy, we actually launched a great initiative. It's called the Fork Pay. So you can pay with your mobile phone. You just swipe your mobile phone and you can pay, so you have no touch paying, which is actually being received quite well. And now also launching gift card, which will support restaurants by encouraging people to dine out as soon as the lockdown ends, and restaurant owners can benefit from that good gift card, you know, as soon as they reopen, and it's a wonderful holiday gift. Give a good meal and some lovely contact with everybody again once it's safe.
Beautiful. And the next question is a little bit similar, but with a twist. And it says, can digital media operators like TripAdvisor or The Fork bring new benefits to their clients, hotel, restaurant, to develop their other value?
So I would say that digital marketplaces can be either a unique place, or they can be a place that can be in parallel to something else. So it depends on the business and the focus that you're in. Our digital marketplace offers a new front window for restaurants where they can display their identity at the same time as being brick and mortar places where you walk down the street and see them, right? So it's a simultaneous event. It's not a one or the other. And it just basically enables people to reach more diners. And who says that? Says hotels, right? Technology developed by media operators like ourselves help restaurants see their turnover increase and increase the visibility that they have online, and they can showcase their establishment in, you know, a prime online location, because that's basically what a marketplace like ourselves are. It's a prime location where you can showcase yourself and benefit from the traffic of about 29 million visits a month. I mean, it's not a small amount of traffic. Our software solutions also help restaurant owners manage bookings, optimize their results and visibility. So we can enhance their booking flexibility, option to create promotions, profile management of their customers, solutions to tackle no-shows, and definitely major marketing campaigns done by ourselves that they are the principal benefit. And we are consistently innovating in order to respond to the evolving needs of consumers within restaurants at all times. And we will consistently partner with everything we can do to get them back on our feet and up and running like everyone else. We're all in this together.
Great, Amanda. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know, what I really liked about your speech is that once again, it made me remember that dreams can travel faster than the sad reality of a virus. So thank you very much for reminding that. And actually, it's a perfect way of closing this. We should never stop dreaming, and we should always look at the world in a positive way. And 2021 cannot be worse than 2020. So I'm sure it's going to be a positive year. Listen, thank you very much for all of you that followed us. I hope you enjoyed. We were very happy because we had over 400 people consistently looking at our event, and we actually will post the event afterwards on the individual website of the various chambers. So we are sure that number is going to go even higher than that. At the AICC, on behalf of all the presidents of the Association of the International Chambers of Commerce here in Geneva, we want to wish you happy holidays and a fantastic 2021 of traveling, food, technology, and especially of vaccines. See you all next year. Thank you very much for participating.
Thank you
very much.
much.
Thank you very much. Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
The best.
Thank you.
One.
Bye-bye.